Hey queer friends, are you ready to be inspired? Welcome to Season 5 of Coming Out and Beyond, a podcast that shares stories from the LGBTQIA plus community. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
Barb Rowlandson is this amazing human being that I met a couple years ago when I needed someone to help me with my business. You know, when you meet somebody and you just connect with them, she was one of those people. And now I am very excited to let you know that Barb Rowlandson is going to do a little coaching on her own. You've seen her on this podcast. You've heard her on this podcast. You may have read a couple of her blogs, but Barb is going to start helping you learn about dating and how to do dating right. Barb, I want to welcome you to the show.
Oh, you made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Thank you
That's
so much.
that's my job.
Oh,
So let's talk a little bit about dating. Now, you did some research on of what are the numbers of people in dating. Can you share some of those with us?
yes, absolutely. And this is from the Pew Research Center. So this isn't some, fly by night or
It's
not official. Like this is the
what
real
is
deal.
it? What is it? It's not a BuzzFeed article.
Right. It's not a BuzzFeed article. This is legit research and surveys of adults who are dating. And so first of all, 3 in 10 of US adults have used dating apps, or they are currently using dating apps. But that number dramatically rises for the LGBTQIA plus community. So for young adults in the queer community, over 53% use dating apps. Now, the number does decrease as the age goes up. So, for example, the ages 30 to 49, it's 37%. That's still a pretty big slice of the pie. That's over a third. And then for ages 50 to 64, it's 20%. Now, this next piece of research, I actually personally have a little bit of dispute with. They say 1 in 10 partnered adults, and partnered means married or living together, have met on the apps. Now, I know I'm not the Pew Research Center, but I am a marriage officiant and I've been working with couples since 2018. And I would say a good 95% of the people who I marry and work with have met on the apps.
So, so I'm thinking about this number because I agree with you. I would say 1 in 10 seems really low to me, but I think what they did was survey everybody who's been married from the time, 0 years to 80 years. So
Right.
anybody who's been married more than 25, 30 years, they haven't had the opportunity to use the apps. So I think
Right.
that's where they get that number one, because if they did it like people married in the last 15 years, I would agree it would be over 50%.
Oh,
I
it's so high.
totally
So
agree.
high.
Yeah, yeah.
So high. So many people's relationship stories starts with we met on Tinder, we met on Bumble, like it is the exception that people meet in person and get married eventually rather than the rule.
I
And
know.
and I
I
think
find
that's
that
the big swell.
when I hear somebody met at like a bar or at church or something like that, I'm like, oh wow.
I know. Wow, you still do that?
Yeah, I
You still
know. I
go to
know.
things in person, especially post-COVID, right? Like COVID trained us all to do so much online. So,
Mhm.
but dating apps have been around a lot longer than COVID too. So that is my personal take on it. I'm glad you agree with me. Now, here's a really interesting figure. For the LGBTQ community, 51% of respondents say that their experiences using the online dating apps have been largely positive. And
So
isn't that different from the narrative that we often hear about dating
well,
apps?
yeah, and that's really interesting because you and I work with women coming out later in life,
Hmm.
and we have such negative feedback about the apps.
Hmm.
So I'm I am thinking that again, this has to do with age.
Mhm.
And since only people 50 to 64, it's 20%. I think people may have tried it and just didn't like it. I think that people who are younger are so used to being connected through apps and stuff like that, that it's no big deal for them. But you and I work with people that have normally lived heteronormative lives, and they really struggle with the apps, right?
Mhm, mhm. Well, here's another thing to think about too. We don't often hear the good news stories because they're not very entertaining, or like people tend to lead with the bad news, or the bad news is what sticks out for us. So rarely do we hear of like, yeah, we had this good experience and all's great. Well, that doesn't make much of a story online, doesn't it? It's not very
Mm-mm,
memorable.
mm-mm.
So I think we have a bias towards remembering the bad stuff and not the good stuff. And I don't think the good stuff hits the surface in the same way
True,
the bad stuff does.
true.
So I think a combination of those things definitely is true.
And then also too, some people use the dating apps because they're looking to find a long-term partner,
Mhm.
while they say 40% report that they're just looking to date casually. So
Mhm.
people use dating apps for different reasons. I have a question for you. Okay,
Yeah.
Barb, full confession here. I've never
Mhm.
been on a dating app.
Oh, well, there you go. That's why you have me.
That is why I have you, right? So can you, when you're on a dating app, make a setting where you say looking for long-term partner versus just looking to date casually? Can you like say that?
Absolutely, you can say that. For some apps, it's a requirement that you define that so that
Mhm.
their algorithm is better able to match you with people who are looking for the same kinds of things. But it's also a good thing to put in your profile, whether it's required or not, just so that you're not attracting people who aren't going to be aligned with you, right?
All right. So my next question for you is,
Yeah.
if you're okay, you and I know this all the time. But
Hmm.
so many people come out later in life, and they're like,
Hmm.
I've got to find my person. I've got to find my person. I've got to find my person, which you and I
Right.
both vehemently disagree with. Um,
Absolutely.
some some people like me find their partner very quickly because it's the universe aligned. But I am the exception rather than the rule,
Hmm.
and I'm fully aware of that. Um, so I feel like in my perspective, that you should just date for fun for a while and not worry about finding a partner. Um, I find that when you let go, things align a lot easier than when you're like, I've got to find my partner, my forever person. And I think that's a leftover from heteronormative culture
Great
because
time.
we
And
we date to partner to marry.
yes, yes. And it's also, I think, for a lot of women, what feels familiar.
Hmm.
They've been in a relationship for a really long time, lived with somebody for a really long time. That's what feels comfortable to them. And so that's kind of what they try and rocket towards. But unfortunately, if you don't get really clear about, what you're looking for in relationship and have some experiences behind you and get to know community, um, oh boy, I think it's a pretty tall order to step out of a long-term marriage and directly into another one for most people.
Right.
Um, yeah, community, number one, right? Like find
Right.
your
Find community. And as somebody who left a long-term marriage, and my wife knows all about this, so I'm not saying anything that she doesn't know. Um, One of the things that I was not expecting to meet anybody right away.
community.
In fact, when my wife first messaged me, I was like, I put her in the friend zone. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing is that I honestly, like, I have made my peace with everything, but I
Mm-hmm.
wish I had some time off. I don't
Yeah.
particularly care about the dating piece, I just don't. But
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted time off from a long-term marriage. even if it was just a year. I mean, luckily we were in a long distance relationship for a year and a half, so I did have some space and time for myself.
Mhm.
But I also felt very responsible to calling her every night and checking in and,
Right,
all that
right.
stuff like that, which would make me leave things early so I could go home and call her and
True.
stuff. So if you are just somebody who is leaving a long-term marriage, I think in hindsight, I would really recommend at least 6 months to a year, maybe
Mhm.
more,
Mhm.
of just
Mhm.
pure alone time. Getting to spend some time by yourself, recovering from your marriage,
Mhm.
recovering from the divorce,
Mhm. Mhm.
without the added pressure of maintaining a new relationship. That can be really hard sometimes.
For sure. I totally agree with that. And if we've been with somebody else for a long time, often our identities get really fused to that other person.
Hmm.
And I mean, my gosh, Emery, how many women have we talked to? I mean, I was this woman who come out of their marriage and they don't even really know who they are.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're so out of touch with their own needs, their own wants, their own desires, and quite frankly, very used to putting other people's needs before their own.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
having that period of healing, of self-exploration, and just getting on a better footing with who you are,
Hmm.
is so important. And I say this over and over and over again. The person you are in a primary relationship with is yourself.
Right.
That's your number one person. You are your number one person. And it's not to say it's not okay to rely on someone else or to have a relationship with someone else who you can count on to be there for you. That's great, but your number one person is you.
Hmm.
Wait, why do
Hmm.
you think Glennon Doyle's book resonated with so many women,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Untamed is like because she in a very radical way about prioritizing her own needs. And there's
Hmm.
so many women out there who just forget what that is.
Yes. And I think that a lot of times when women are in their first relationship with another woman, and you experience this, and so did I,
Mhm,
is that it just feels so amazing and all consuming. And
mhm.
we don't think about like when the honeymoon period wears off.
Yeah.
And and also to be very honest, it's like when you have your first relationship with a woman, and whether you're 20 or 60, um, a lot of times it brings such amazing feelings, like all the dopamine and all the wonderful feel good hormones
Oh, yeah.
we produce as two women together. And so if you partner with that very first person that you're with, have, out of my observation, I'd say 10 to 15% of the time, people partner and it sticks. And
Mhm,
then sometimes people get married right away with somebody like that and they're divorced within a year.
mhm.
So being, in the beginning, even if though you have all those feels, being open to the idea that I'm going to date this person for a while. And even
Mhm,
though this feels like the most amazing thing in the world, I
mhm,
plan to date her at least a year. And
mhm.
we're just telling you this out of hard won experience.
Oh, girl.
Yeah, I'm going to date her for at least a year before we consider moving in together.
At
Or
least.
I consider, uh, you know, maybe, I know when you become exclusive with someone, it's, you want to go off the apps. Yes, that's fine if you want to go off the apps and
Mhm.
date that person exclusively. But I think what Barb and I really believe in is don't rush. Just don't rush.
No, no. If our brains are so tricky, aren't they?
Yeah.
They just brew up this like feel good soup of chemicals to create that bonding experience. But unfortunately, a lot of times what happens is that bonding happens and it's not the right person for us because they're not fully aligned with our lifestyle, our values. all the things, our beliefs, like all the things that are core to who we are. And that's a big part of what we're doing with Lavender Dating is, the very first step is helping you get clear about what it is that you need. And I use this metaphor frequently when I describe when I started dating. Yes, and please, everyone, learn from my mistakes.
The best coaches are the people that have been through stuff. They honestly are.
I made so many mistakes.
Yes. So Barb and I make all the mistakes so you guys don't have to make.
Absolutely. Are you like your lesbian BFF, your lesbian auntie, your lesbian
You're a
big
lesbian,
sis?
biggest big sister. We're just because we have fucked
Absolutely.
things up now.
Yes, yes, and please listen to our wisdom. But yeah, I often will compare those early days of dating to like jumping into a big lake of dark water.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you hit a nice sunny patch and it feels so warm and nice, and you're just treading water and it feels lovely. And then other times you jump in and you hit sharp rock. And the part of the problem is you had no visibility to what's underneath the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So by getting clear about what it is that we want, and I mean, I'm famous for my lists, Barb's lists, right? Of
Yes,
making priorities.
she likes homework. So if you're somebody who hates homework, I'm just gonna warn you.
Well, you get out of it what you put into it. So
Yeah,
that's
you
all I'm saying.
absolutely, yes, absolutely. I
So,
agree with you.
we're working to get very clear about what it is you need. And that also means being really in touch with who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's some of the stuff that we're going to work on if you're working with me. Then creating the profile, then stepping out into the world of dating, whether it's online or in person, it's so much more empowering. And like to call it a favor that you do for your future self,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because your future self, I guarantee, once you start dating and you meet somebody, your brain's going to start making that feel good soup, and you're going to want to just throw everything out the window.
Right, because I found my person.
Found my person. And then 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months down the road, when problems start to crop up because, you really love each other and you're not aligned,
Yeah,
that's when it becomes painful and messy and when breakups happen, right?
yeah. So I'm going to ask Barb some questions that
Please.
we hear very frequently in the lesbian community. And Barb and I work with people who are coming out later in life, but this honestly applies to any queer woman identifying person. Our advice is very solid for anybody. So, Barb, how do you differentiate between a friend and a girlfriend? You know those stories like when the women come back from going out and they're like, I think that was a date. I'm not sure. I don't know if she was my friend or my girlfriend. How would you differentiate between a friend and a girlfriend?
Okay, you're right. This is a very common question. And I mean, there are certain nonverbal indicators that you can look towards, but can we just give a shout out to direct communication? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's still a thing, folks. We can ask the direct question.
That's a really good oh my gosh, what a novel idea.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we could actually ask and say, hey, I just, if you're not sure if that person's queer or not, ask like, hey, I'm a lesbian. How Wondering how you define yourself, or are you dating anyone? Or, open up the conversation with an open-ended question conversation that leads to that kind of response that you want, something that's a little more revealing about who that person is, and also offering something about yourself so that they may return it in kind. But if it's nonverbal stuff you're looking for. There's some things, very classic things that people who have a shine on each other do. One is direct eye contact and sustaining eye contact, right?
Mhm.
Someone is absolutely rapt with what you're saying.
They're
To
going to
pay,
pay attention.
yeah, they're absolutely going to pay attention. Um, watch for things like, flushing. Um, are they laughing at all your jokes?
Mhm.
Are they mirroring some of your movements? So if they sit like this, or if you sit like this, they're sitting like this, with their
So
hand on their
Barb
cheek.
is sitting, if for those who are listening, Barb's sitting with her chin on her fist, her closed fist, and like looking
Mhm.
out.
Right.
So yeah, so you're
So
mirroring each other. But what I'm talking about, so that's wonderful advice. But I'm wondering about the woman that comes back from a date and is like, I'm not really quite sure was what that was. Like, how
mhm,
do you approach that? Like, do you call her up and say, hey, were we just getting together as friends? Or,
mhm.
yeah. So tell me more about what do you do for that?
Well, again, I think, the best solution for something like that is, you get together, you have a good time, you want to get together again. Um, hey, I'd really like to take you out again. How about phrasing it like that?
Ah,
We don't really take our just our friends
it's
out.
out. Mm-hmm.
So, or just directly ask the question, hey, I had a great time with you, and I would be interested in seeing more of you. And I'd like to take you on a date.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I realize this is so uncomfy for so many. It is uncomfy. You're putting yourself out there and you're being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
However, best to know right away, right? Like,
Well, yeah, you and I have worked with people that, oh my God, they have obsessed about whether this girl likes them or not. And I'm, as people who know me know, I'm incredibly direct. And so, like, to me, it's like, why waste all your energy
mhm,
wondering whether somebody likes you or not? I mean, okay, yes, you're preserving the fantasy,
mhm,
because if you don't know the answer, you get to preserve the fantasy. But if you know the answer, guess what happens? If it's yes, great. Then maybe you guys go on a date and see if it's going to turn into something. If it's no, it frees your brain up. It frees your brain up to stop obsessing about what is next or if you're going to date this person or not.
mhm. Yeah, let's not hang our futures on the idea of something. It should be hung on something real and concrete.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
first of all, if she's not queer, because that's a big one, like a lot of people in
Oh
our
my God,
community
so
have
many
less feelings
people.
for friends.
Oh my goodness. And if she's not queer, please just honestly, so many women have crushes on straight women. I've never had a crush on a straight woman in my life.
Hmm.
Every time I have had a crush, I always know it's a queer woman. I guess
Hmm.
I'm efficient that way. But I mean, you don't want to earn the toaster oven, folks.
No,
Don't,
no.
because okay, that's an old joke. It's from Ellen. We'll put the reference, we'll put the blog post in about it. But you don't want to be the person that is pining for somebody. So, yes, I really do think that falling in love with people who are not interested in pursuing a romantic relationship, again, is an enormous waste of your time.
Hmm.
You know, I just and about the toaster oven, I was saying that there's an old joke that anytime a lesbian sleeps with a straight girl and turns her into a lesbian, then she become, they win a toaster oven. um that a lot of heartbreak can be happen with that toaster oven. So if you have a crush, it's okay to have a crush. It's okay to
Yep,
have a fantasy about somebody that may be straight, but they will never give you what you need.
exactly.
They won't.
Exactly. And if you find yourself constantly falling for straight women and fantasizing about straight women, um, you know, I think it's maybe a good question to ask yourself is why? And
Mm-hmm.
also maybe that's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
to help you with. Like you might want to talk to a counselor or a therapist about that one.
Well, I
No
think
shame.
that no shame, but there's a reason why you keep falling for a straight girl, which I'm going to assume it's safe. You
Yes.
know, you keep yourself safe, you keep yourself emotionally safe if we fall in love with somebody who is unable to reciprocate those feelings for us. So if you're one of those girls that like really gets off on sleeping with straight women, um, be a really good question for your therapist. Above my pay grade too. There's a
Yeah.
reason why you do that. And I would love for someone to talk to us about that. And
Yeah, maybe that's a future podcast.
that's a
Yeah,
future broadcast
for sure.
episode. Barb, so you're on the apps, you meet somebody, and they seem really great.
Mhm.
Don't talk to you.
Uh,
Okay, they like you ask, they ask questions, like you ask them questions, and it's just so hard to start a conversation with you.
mhm,
What do you
mhm.
do?
This is such common feedback that I hear about dating apps is that like the conversation starts out strong, and drops off quickly. And I think that there's a lot of us who just don't know, I don't have that skill to carry on conversation. Now, in some cases, it might be that, that person's lost interest and they're just kind of not saying it directly and they're just dropping off. But really, I think in a lot of cases, people just don't have that skill. And so that's something we worked on in the live workshop that we did in Provincetown and that we will
Mhm.
continue to do with Lavender Dating is to teach you how to keep the conversation going. Um, you know, primarily by asking open-ended questions, which is actually a lot harder than it sounds.
Mhm.
That's the feedback that I get from the open-ended question exercises that I've done, is
Mhm.
that, I really had to think. But, if we ask a closed-ended question, and we get a yes or no answer, like, where do we go from here? Okay, well, I have to sort of take a mental leap to go to the next topic. I think you can really run out of things to talk about. Um, I told this one story, Emery, you know this story when I was on the dating apps. Um, I had this woman uh who was really challenging talking to her, and she lived in the country and I lived in the country. And her question to me was, so you heat your house with propane? Yes. Yes, I do. Like, there's nowhere to go from that.
Well, that's not an open-ended question.
It really isn't. And
How would you
also,
how would you do an open-ended question with the propane question?
I would maybe frame it of living in the country poses a lot of challenges and it's a lot of hard work. Um, uh, what do you what do you find the most challenging in country living, or what do you love the best about country living? Maybe keeping it positive if you ask what do you love the best. And that really causes the person to have to like think, okay, well, what do I really love about it? And here's what I love about it. And if can you see how much more engaging that is? It's like, oh,
Well,
you're asking me about something that my lifestyle that I love.
yes. Meaning I love propane.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, are you trying to sell me propane? Yeah. Yeah.
So I am going to, let's play a game. Okay.
Okay.
You're going to challenge me to ask some open-ended questions and we'll do one or two. And so
Okay.
people who are listening, I want you to do this too. Okay, go ahead. Tell me what you want me to ask an open-ended question about.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you about something that I really love. And then I want you to ask me open-ended questions about it. Okay.
Okay.
Something I really love is I'm a grower and I grow flowers and I absolutely love it.
What's your favorite flower?
Oh my gosh, that is such a difficult question to answer, but I'm gonna have to say peonies because,
Mm,
as you can see from my background, peonies are not only are they big and beautiful and flouncy, but they are also fragrant. And I think for that reason, they're the queen of the garden.
mm. Um, but don't they die quick?
Well, yes, actually, they do. They don't last long in the vase, or and they're just available for a certain point of the year, for a little bit of the year. But there's actually a number of ways to extend their life. In like if you're interested in knowing that, I will keep talking about that because I will talk about flowers forever. But you know what? I'm really interested to know what your favorite flower is.
Hmm. I have so many of them, but I really love hydrangeas. I think
Oh,
hydrangeas are really pretty flowers and they often grow for a really long time. Um,
hmm.
my ex-wife used to call them grandma flowers, but I don't think of them as grandma flowers. I really love them. They're beautiful.
Oh,
So
I
that's how, yeah. So Barb sort of took the conversation, she answered the question and then she took it and then she turned the question around, which, you can answer a question and then you ask a question back. So let's do one more.
Sure. Do you want to switch roles in this one and tell me about something that you really love?
No, let's you do that.
Okay, sure. Um, okay, so you know, something that about me is that I learned to drive really later in life, and now I really love to drive.
Hmm. So knowing me, I would ask, so why did it take you so long to learn to drive? And were you scared? So
I've,
now Barb could answer it, yes, right? But answer it another way. Because I did answer,
so
were you scared?
I was, and I actually had a phobia, but I did a lot of hard work to overcome it, and now I understand a lot more about how phobias work, and driving's really opened up my life, and I've been able to travel a lot more and do more and connect with people more, and driving's really changed my life.
Well, good for you. But I also want to say when Barb answered that as somebody who's going to be a potential partner with her or a potential dating person with her, I heard in that conversation, one, she is willing to work on herself.
Mhm,
She had a fear and she dealt with it the best. I mean, it took her a while, but she finally, dealt with it the best she could. And she overcame that fear. So to me, as somebody who values therapy a lot or values self-work a lot, I'm like, oh, this person also values self-work. So she might be a potential dating partner. So sometimes it's really important to look under the what they're saying and see what they value by how they answer the question, right?
mhm, mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you so much by just, digging a little bit deeper and not cutting off the conversation at the past before you even get anywhere. So that is definitely a thing we're working on,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
our coaching program.
So you're two single moms. A lot of our later in life lesbians and a lot of lesbians are often single parents.
Yeah.
How do you make that work?
Wow. Well, that is definitely a tough one because moms, as we know, are some of the busiest people in the whole wide world. And our kids are like, well, the most important people in our world, right? They're our
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. We love them.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids come first. I mean, it's just how that goes. But I think one way that you can make it work a little bit better is if your kids are in the same ballpark developmentally.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Mm-hmm.
means in the same age range. Dating someone whose kids are like where your kids are disparate ages, I think can be a lot more challenging. If one person's
Mm-hmm.
further ahead in their mom experience than the other. I personally experienced this, and I can tell you it's really, really, really difficult to roll the clock back on momming.
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah, very difficult.
Well, and I think that's when you have to become very, very clear on who you want to date.
Hmm.
Um, you know, although I've only dated one woman, I had three criteria that I kept to.
Hmm.
And that was the only criteria. Honestly, y'all, it was the only criteria at that time. And so the three things that I wanted was I wanted somebody with no kids because I have four, and that's a
Hmm.
lot of kids. And I also knew that I just didn't have the capacity or energy to combine families right now. Now, um, I don't even think I'd want to do it now. But I knew my limits about that.
Hmm.
I also wanted someone who'd been out for a long time. Like I'm just gonna say this. Sometimes there's this divide between people who've been out a long time and people just coming out, and I think it's ridiculous. And I really like people. I was, then I really wanted someone who'd been out a long time because I knew
Hmm.
there were things I didn't know about the queer community. And so I
Right.
wanted to be somebody who understood the queer community. And I do
Hmm.
think it really benefited me greatly because I think it speeded my journey along a lot faster.
Hmm.
So that was one of my non-negotiables, as Barb calls them.
Yeah.
And then this was my third one was what's your under the non-negotiables? What do you call it? There's the
I
non-negotiables.
have wants, needs, and deal breakers.
Okay. So this was a want slash need. I needed somebody that had a healthy respect of religion because at that time I was working as a minister. So I couldn't, I mean, I could be, honestly, I'm somebody who can be with an atheist, but they have to respect what I believe. And that
Hmm.
was really, what was really important to me. I happened to meet a woman, my wife is very, she's sometimes more theologically conservative than I am, but she had good chops. And so when we were first talking, we never had, we always like just were like blah 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 blah. We never had a problem with that. And she had really good theological chops. So
Mm.
it was somebody beyond surface level religious person. It was somebody who actually had given some thought to it. So
Right.
I think it's really important with Barb, when you work with Barb, is that you really like that was like non-negotiables. I didn't label it then
Mm.
non-negotiables, but I
Mm.
really agree about the children thing. I
Yeah.
knew Barb when she was with her last partner who had younger children, and it was really challenging on many different levels, although she
Yeah.
loved them very, very much. And
Right.
so, really being thoughtful, do you want to go backwards? If
Hmm.
you're like, I raised four kids, my youngest at the time was 14, like probably, no one younger than 14. You know what I mean? I just,
Yes.
I can't,
Yeah.
I can't,
Yeah.
and so like really like saying, because this is the thing, there's a lot of people out there and there will be somebody who can meet your criteria, or,
Mhm.
you might bend it a little. Like I have somebody right now who is dating somebody, their 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 daughter, their daughter is only 14 and her kids are in their late 20s, and she's
Mhm.
making the best of it. But I know it's challenging for her, you know?
An individual choice, really. And
Yeah.
I think knowing yourself really important is really important when it comes to, I mean, all of these points is going to be important, but certainly with kids, becoming attached to kids and, and having them see you as maybe a parental figure. And then if things don't go well, it becomes very difficult for everyone involved. So having a really good idea about what you want for your future. Now that's another thing. Like, you may or may not be flexible on the kid thing, but it has to align with your future. So does your future when you like really imagine it, does it involve, say, I want to do a ton of travel.
Hmm.
I want to go see the world. I've
Hmm.
raised my kids. Now I want to be free to go see the world. Or I want to dig into a ton of community service and do that. Or I want to switch careers. Or I want to retire to another location. Like, really think about what it is that you want so that the person that, you know, who comes to you and whoever else comes along with them, that they're aligned with that. And, you
Mhm.
know, if you really want to travel, well, that's great. But, you know, traveling when you're taking care of a bunch of little kids is,
It's hard.
well, I mean, if you're independently wealthy and have a couple of sets of grandmas and grandpas to watch kids for extended periods, or don't mind doing that, well, then that's great for you.
Mhm.
Um, but in reality, most of us reach this sort of like stage in life where we want some liberty, right?
Right. I really, really, I mean, like, because I was in a very traditional marriage where I was the primary caregiver for the children most of the time, like when I was first coming out, the thought of taking care of anybody younger than my
Mm,
children, I just did not. I'm so proud of myself. Sometimes I fucked a lot of things, but I was really proud of myself that those were like two non-negotiables for me.
right.
That I wanted somebody who had been out for a while, and I really wanted somebody that didn't have kids.
Mhm, mhm,
Now I probably, if I, God forbid something happened to my wife and I, if I was with a woman, I could have a woman, I could be with somebody who had adult children. That would not be a
mhm,
problem. But at that point in my life, I just knew I had so much on my plate with my own coming out. I didn't want to add other things to my plate because I
yeah,
was already overwhelmed. So
yeah.
thinking about, and especially if you're dating, you can be really picky about who you're going to date.
Yes, it's okay to be picky. And you know what? Here's another thing. It's okay to casually date
Hmm. It's
with
okay
no
to have
expectation of it going any further.
it's
Like,
okay to have casual sex. It
yeah,
is okay. You know, it is
totally.
okay to, like, if you want to sleep with a bunch of different women, as long as you're honest, would you now, like, okay, so this is my question because I don't know. Like, if you are like, I just want to casually date and maybe sleep with a couple of women, before I start, trying to settle down or something like that. Um, how do you approach that on the apps?
So being transparent about what you're looking for. Earlier you asked, you know, do people put down what they're looking for relationship wise, long term, short term? Yes, you can absolutely put I'm looking for casual relationship or we'll see where it goes. Or just looking for hookups. I mean, you can put that too, and that's okay. And there will be
Mm-hmm.
plenty of other people who are aligned with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so so number one is just being transparent on the apps and not say you're looking for something that you're not. Um, and going from there, you know, as long as you're approaching it safely and you know, yeah, like go to town. Go
Mm-hmm.
to town, go have some fun. If you're looking to sort of, I know some people like to, especially when they've been married for a long time and they're just starting to date, they're hot to trot, shall we say, because they're looking for
Yes.
confirmers, right?
Well, and also too, they're horny as hell because of the second adolescence thing, which is very common, especially with the late in life lesbian community. We never had a first, a lot of times, a first
Mhm.
adolescence. So we see a lot of our clients who are like, oh my God, I am so horny. What is wrong with me? Nothing. You're
Yeah,
just finally acknowledging your
yeah,
sexuality and you want to have sex, and that is okay.
yeah. And I've got
Yeah.
great news for you. There
Hmm.
are plenty of women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, who
70s.
70s who are not looking for long-term relationship. Like there are so many of us who are very happy with the lives that we've cultivated for ourselves, living on our own, being single, you know, owning our own space, going to bed when we want, eating popcorn for dinner if we want. Like like just having our own habits and our own lifestyle that we've cultivated to suit us. And not in a real keen rush to go and invite somebody into that space on a full-time basis.
Well, and also too, all of this, now we talk about this a lot too, is you can be like, oh, I'm just going to date casually and blah, 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 blah. And you meet somebody and she's like, I'm just going to date casually, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
and you fall in love.
Well, that for sure.
That, because we talk about this a lot because, a lot of times like your best laid plans,
Mhm.
you know, um, you sometimes think you may want one kind of person and you're like, oh my God, I thought I was going to end up with a butch lesbian, but my girlfriend is the most femme woman I've ever seen in my life,
Exactly.
and so we encourage people to remain open about that and not put too many parameters when saying what they want. It's more about saying what they want for their lives going
Mhm.
forward.
Mhm.
It's, I feel like people should really limit themselves when they're looking for one type of lesbian. Do you
Mhm.
agree with me?
I mean, I think that people do have their starting places as far as attraction goes. And there are some people who are very like stubbornly, like stick to they're only looking for one type of woman. I think that, they're the people who end up waiting the longest
Mm-hmm. Right.
for a relationship. But if you can keep the doors open, especially if you're just sort of figuring out what it is that you want, date all kinds of women and
Mm-hmm.
find out what you need for attraction. Like, you know, I've dated all kinds of women. I've dated more feminine women. I've dated a trans man, wondering if that would be right for me since I've in my brain and I've recognized how wrong this is now, but like I was like, oh, I really love butch women. Maybe I would be into this trans guy, but he's a man.
Yes.
and and I learned after about like I'm gonna say 6 dates that I don't want to date a man. I want to date a woman.
Right.
So I learned and I'm still friends with this person to this day, by the way, but it's but you learn a lot about people. And oh, by the way, you can date all kinds of people, and not everybody you date is going to be a love interest. Sometimes they'll just be a friend.
Yeah, you
You
end
don't
up like you
all want
mentioned. Right. And you mentioned how the man that you dated, trans man you dated, has become a friend.
yeah,
You're still friends with him. And so
absolutely.
this is another little this is another little what do I want to say? Another hack on how to find community, because you are not going to be attracted to every woman you meet. She may look great on paper and then you meet her in person and there is zero spark. But
Exactly.
you really like her, she's nice, but you don't want to go to bed with her. You don't want to have
Mhm.
sex with her or anything like that because we're not attracted to every woman we meet. And
Exactly.
so you know, being willing to maintain a friendship. And you can say, hey, would you like to get together for some time to have drinks or go watch a game or go to the movies or something like that as friends, because I think you have to be really specific so that the person knows that you're not interested in a love match, but and they may say yes, they may say no, who knows, but you have an opportunity to make a friend. And that's the most wonderful thing about the back end of the lesbian dating apps, right? Is that you have
Yeah,
an opportunity to make friends with other queer people. And if you're new to the community, it's
exactly.
a great way to make friends.
You make friends and then you can date their exes.
Yes. Okay, Barb, we're going to end today. I want you to tell us about Lavender Dating. So
Okay.
as we said, go to lavenderdating.com. We are having our first mutual support group starting November 4th at 7 p.m. Central Time on Zoom. And Barb's
Mhm.
going to tell you all about it.
Yeah, so we've seen from the numerous women who have come through Lotus Group Coaching that having some support and direction and clarity around dating, especially if you have not dated for a long time, is super duper important. And it's badly needed. And by the way, this isn't just for later in lifers. I just want to underscore this. This is for any queer woman who is looking for support in dating. And not only can it be intimidating to step back out there, but if you've never used an app before, that can also seem like a scary thing to do. And a lot of folks just, you know, don't know how to put themselves out there. They're not good at talking about themselves. They're not good at tooting their own horn. Let's not forget too that dating, especially online dating, is a marketing piece, right? Like we have to create a profile that is compelling, that speaks to who we are and what's important to us and what we're looking for. And writing is often not people's strong suit either. So women need support in all kinds of ways when they step out into the dating world. So we've created Lavender Dating to offer you that kind of support. We've got group coaching programs and individual coaching programs that are accessible to you. And I'll work directly with you to be able to help you get to a point where you can start feeling confident about stepping into the world of dating and then navigating as you go along. So that means how to look out for red flags. What are some green flags? How do I start conversation? How do I ask for second date? How do I end a date and say, like, how do I, with integrity and being, I'm not going to say polite because we don't always have to be polite, but ending a date that's not going well. How do we do that? As how do we assert ourselves in doing that? These are all areas that women need support. And so we're going to offer that. So starting November 4th, 7 p.m. Central Time is our first group session. There are limited spaces available for that. So if you're interested, I really highly recommend going to lavenderdating.com and signing up for the program that seems right for you. And if you want a spot in that group,
You
sooner
better
rather than
grab it
later.
because we're getting full. And honestly, this is our beta group. So a beta group is the first group that we're going to be working with. And so we have several people who have signed up already. And this is the thing is that you will have an opportunity to work with Barb, but you will also be with what we know about mutual support groups. You're going to
Mhm.
be on the same boat with everybody else where you're all
Yep.
trying to figure this out together. And who knows, sometimes you join a mutual support group and there may be somebody in there that you could connect with and click with. But the thing is Barb and I's intention with all the work we do is we believe in shared common humanity. We believe in self-kindness and we believe in mindfulness. And so this is a real opportunity for you in the support group to
Mhm.
have that experience of shared common humanity, but also what's really magical about it is in listening to other people's stories, you hear your own. And so sometimes when you're listening to a story about somebody else's sharing, you are
Mhm.
able to say, oh, and you can see it at a different vantage point because honestly, it's really hard for us to see our own shit, but we can see another person's shit like that, right? I just snapped my
Totally.
fingers. And so that can be really helpful if you find that you have a block around dating and
Mhm.
or because you may see it with that other mutual support group person. So we're limiting this group to 10 people. So we really would love for you to join. It is 6 weeks of your life. It's
Mhm.
6 Mondays. And so by the end of that, we believe that you will be confident about entering the dating world. You will have clarity about what you want. What are they called again, Barb? Your wants, needs, and non-negotiables.
Yeah, deal breakers. Yeah.
Yeah, deal breakers, wants, needs, and you'll understand that. You will also understand maybe what is the best app for your needs because not every dating app is the same. And sometimes, there are local dating apps which are really good for people. If you're like, I'm not doing an LDR, a long distance relationship, we'll help you you will find an app that might be appropriate for you. There are apps for people who are just Jewish,
Mhm.
J-Date and stuff like that. So if it's important to you to find somebody of your faith tradition and background, we can point you in the right direction to that. But the best thing of all is that you get the guidance from Barb Rowlandson,
Oh.
uh, who is not only an experienced dater and has used the dating apps a lot, but she's an
Mhm.
amazing marketer. So she's going to teach you how to market yourself. And
Mhm.
if you're like, oh, I hate support groups, I don't want to do a support group. Well, guess what? Barb is also offering individual coaching peeps for people who just want to work with Barb. And that's a 3-month program. All of this is priced very, very reasonably. And so if you really want to get that one-on-one support from Barb and get all the love directed to you, and all the things will happen, the same things will happen, whether you do the support group or the individual coaching, you just get to spend more time with the lovely Barb Rowlandson. So if you do the individual coaching, because that is for 3 months. So is it time for you to change your life? Is it time for you to get over your fear of dating? Because what we want is for you not to be afraid. Our goal in life is to empower women. So we are wanting to empower queer women to take on the dating apps and be warriors.
And motivate you to take action, because let me tell you, she's not going to show up at your door magically one day with a pizza.
Well,
That's
Barb and I have a mutual friend that's here in Nashville. And I always joke, she is not going to fall through the ceiling and land on your lap.
Yeah.
You need to get out of your house.
Yeah, you need to get out of your comfort zone. And just like any other skill or any other goal that we have, we actually have to take steps towards that. And often we get support for those steps. You want to be in better shape, you go to a personal trainer. You want to, heal your past, relationships. You go to a therapist. If you're looking to have success in the dating world and you're not having success, or you're nervous about stepping out on your own, get a coach, and I could be your gal. So
you could be your gal. Well, Barb, thank you so much about sharing your wisdom today about dating, lavender dating. The reason why we called it Lavender Dating, because in the 50s and 60s, gay people were used as, like, in the McCarthyism in the 50s and 60s, they called it the Lavender Scare, because, the queer people were going to take over the American government. We're not that organized and we don't care that much. And the other thing is the feminist, Betty Friedan, called the lesbians who were helping with now the Lavender Menace. So we are reclaiming, lots of other people have reclaimed it too, but we are reclaiming lavender dating as a word of power. So let us help you navigate the dating world and reach out. You can go to Lavender Dating at AnneMarieZanzal.com. If you want to email Barb personally, please go on the website, because there's not only, there's a couple great downloads. So if you're not ready yet and just want to do the downloads, that's fine. But also too, you get to hear Barb's wisdom in all the podcasts that she has been on. And also too, if you just say, you know what, I need to talk to Barb before I join this program, on the website at lavenderdating.com, you are able to just make an appointment with Barb and talk to her a little bit more about what she offers, if you feel like you need to have a one-on-one time with her. So I hope we see you soon. And Barb, any last words?
Gosh, be brave. Be brave, people. Take the plunge.
Take the plunge.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA plus stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at AnneMarieZanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit AnneMarieZanzal.com.